And so this discussion goes into the question of what is a reasonable withdrawal rate from your IRA in retirement.
I mean, if you're making 12 in good mutual funds and the S&P is average 11.8, and if inflation for the last 80 years has averaged 4%, if you make 12 and you need to leave 4% in there for inflation raises, that leaves you 8. So I'm perfectly comfortable drawing 8. But if you want to be a little bit conservative, 7, but sure not 5 or 3.
Well, I was trying to back check it because, 3 to 5, I thought that was a big range. And a lot of the studies I found showed.
Well, there's a lot of studies that are stupid in this space. So, it's just wrong. Listen, man, the math I just gave you is the math. If you're making 12% and inflation is 4, and you leave 4 in there, so your nest egg grows by 4, it's simple. 8 is what's left over.
Now, Scott, there is all kinds of things wrong with that comment that Dave made, and it wasn't just a slip of the tongue; it was an emphatic, no, you can withdraw 8%. Now, let me say, if you were getting consistently every year 12% return on your investment, then Dave's math works. The problem is you're not getting 12% every year. I don't care who you are. You're just not. That's not how the equity markets work. And Dave is we're going to talk about this in just a second, but Dave is really all about investing 100% in equities regardless of how old you are. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let's talk about this 12% mutual fund thing. Occasionally, you will see a mutual fund perform at 12% or above. In 1 year, it could go to 20 or 30%.
Absolutely.
But the next year, it could be down 12%, and that's the problem.
Yeah, you look at just the last couple of years in the equity market, whether you measure it by the S&P 500 index or you take a look at some growth mutual funds, which Dave is a big proponent of, and you can see double-digit negatives in 2022. Right before that, in 2021, it was double-digit positives.
Right.
And likely in 2023, you saw some double-digit or at least high single-digit positives. But if you take a look at this concept of, and Dave promotes this a lot with the 12% mutual funds, the reality is over a long term, even 12% is a bit of a stretch. Let's take a look at this graphic we have for our viewing audience of the S&P 500 average annual returns, picking out several time frames. So this was 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, you see on the screen, that all ending at the end of 2022. Now, of course, as we already highlighted, 2022 was a very bad year for the stock market. But over the last 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, the S&P 500 index was up 7.5% on average annually. Over the last 10 years, you're looking pretty good, but you're still not touching 10.41%. Over the last 20 years, the index returned 7.64% on average annually. And over the last 30 years, if you stretch it out, going back to 1993, it's 7.52%. So you can see there, if you're going to, as Dave said, the math is the math. Well, that's the math. Now, you obviously could say, well, you're not, and you can't invest directly into the index. So a mutual fund is not the index, but you can bet many of the companies that make up that index are in those growth mutual funds.
It's a proxy for how the market is doing. And here is the harm, is that 12% mutual fund sounds great, but it sets unrealistic expectations. Scott, when we were participating in the endorsed local provider or SmartVestor Pro program, we would have people come in from that program and go, I want one of those 12% mutual funds.
Yeah.
And we would try to educate them about, no, but Dave says there's 12% mutual funds. And I love what Janet did with this one time. There was a guy that was just pounding the table. He wanted those 12% mutual funds, and we weren't giving it to him. And Janet looked at him and said, let me ask you a question. If I had a unicorn, do you think I'd keep it in the back closet back here, or would I put it in the zoo and charge admission? Oh, you'd put it in the zoo and charge admission. Well, you know what? I don't have a unicorn, and I don't have a 12% mutual fund because neither one of those things exist. And so it really is a misnomer that has gotten out into the public because of the generalization that has been made about this. and the over-optimistic view of what equities will do for you. Will you occasionally have a period of time that a mutual fund or an investment in equities might do 12%? Yes, but your longer-term average is going to need to be moderated from that. And there's a great difference in the outcome that you get in a 12% return versus a 7 or 8% rate of return, which is, in our opinion, way more reasonable.
Yeah.